And I'd like to start that by thanking all of you for your participation, also by thanking people who made it happen. And you didn't necessarily get to meet all of them, in particular, Audrey Collat and Laurence Tellier have done wonders for us at the LPSC and the ILL on the administrative side of things. John Chi and Thomas, you've both seen give talks, but without them, we couldn't have prepared the abstract book. We couldn't have distributed the newsletters. We couldn't have posted the talks on Indico as efficiently as we've been doing. So really a big thank you to all of them. And then in a moment, I will pass the word to Chen Yu, who has maybe taken on one of the hardest tasks of all by paying close attention to the entire workshop and extracting the highlights to give you some nice words at the end of it. In line with that, I'd also like to thank our three lecturers and tell you to please go watch their videos because they are available. The link is here. And in principle, the most important part is to thank all of you for joining us. So we're very sorry that we couldn't see you in person at Les Houches. The picture that you see here is one that I took myself nearly 10 years ago when I was in Les Houches for the very first time. And I was really looking forward to being back there and having the conference. And I hope we'll have another chance at some point in the not too distant future. But from my point of view, and I think I speak for all of the organizers when I say this, it's been a real success over the last week. And we've greatly enjoyed all of the extremely stimulating talks and lectures and the discussions that went alongside of them. So we didn't really have the chance to sit down and talk over beers in the evening, but we did not too bad a job, even so, under really strange circumstances. And we hope this sets a precedent for the level of participation and engagement that we'll be seeing in the future. So before handing it off to Chen Yu, I'd like to just tell you some of the particularly interesting things that we've learned about hosting a conference this year under these circumstances. The entire world has learned a lot about exponential growth in the last 12 months. We knew some of that stuff already. In particular, it's a well-recognized law of conference organization that the number of registrations is an exponentially increasing function up to the deadline. What we now have the statistical resolution to see is that it's actually a valid double exponential, and you can fit the two different time constants here with surprisingly good agreement. So for the first 80, 90% or so, the doubling time is about 2 weeks. And then in the last day and a half, it doubles in a day and a half. But unfortunately, coronavirus wasn't done with us yet. And that was our first wave. We got a second wave afterwards, and that led right up to the beginning of the conference this week. And so, of course, if you plot this, you see the beautiful exponential, and then you see another cumulative swell with a slower exponential constant. So there's definitely material to look into for future conference organizers and people who want to understand the social dynamics side of organizing physics workshops. But it also, for me, provided an interesting opportunity to track participation statistics as well as registration, and error handling is a really funny business here. You'll see that the errors are not only from counting statistics, but you have to pay close attention when a session ends, how many people leave and how many people were actually not there, and just stay connected. And that's been a surprisingly low number for this week. I think we were normally below 10 residual people who didn't recognize the right moment to sign off at the end of each session. And that's very pleasing. I'd also like to particularly thank our North American participants for joining us at such odd hours, because you can see the periodic structure of this data really reflects when they were able to join us. And I mean, okay, here I am sitting at 8 o'clock in the evening, but there were people getting up at 5 in the morning, and we're really happy that you saw this as a valuable occasion to suffer that pain for. The low points here are worth a special mention, because these are the lectures that were recorded in the morning, and by rights, you should actually put them up to the red values. But even these are not accurate, because those view counts were still climbing as I was compiling the data just a couple of minutes ago. So please do go watch our lectures and profit from them. We were very pleased with the level both of direct interest in pedagogy And we're sure those will be useful to the community going forward. So now, because we didn't have a lecture this morning, there's really only one more thing for me to tie up before passing the word to Chen Yu, and that's to take a brief 2 hours to tell you about time reversal from Wolfgang Pauli as he lectured on it in 1952. So we're continuing a tradition here, and I want to make really sure that you all went through the lecture that we sent around to all of the registered participants this morning and thought through its implications, because this is stuff that everyone in the field should know at some level. And so we'll start with spinless particle. You take the time conjugate of the Schrodinger equation and you see how the solutions behave. And okay, I'm not really going to do this, but I think it's cool that in 1952, Pauli was actually lecturing on time reversal at Les Houches. We were organizing this conference, even if we couldn't really be physically at Les Houches 69 years later, on something that follows more or less directly from the theory that he was working out then. And if you do go through it, there are really gems in there. So you can see Pauli lecturing about Pauli matrices and calling them Pauli matrices. You can see how to correctly treat the transformation of a spin operator. You can see a statement as something which is essentially Cramer's theorem that we still hear people talking about today as a non-relativistic analogy of the CPT theorem. And if you want to know more about the CPT theorem or any of this, then read the lecture and go back and watch Laura Covey's lecture for Monday. So all of this is a long-winded way of saying that I'm very pleased with everything that we've been able to do this week and of the continuation of a rich history that it represents. And so the only thing that remains is to tentatively announce that our next workshop will continue another pattern of exponential growth. At least we hope. We have pretty big error bars on this one, as I discussed before. But this is the fourth in the series, and we've been alternating back and forth between North America and Europe. And we've sort of tentatively decided to continue that pattern. And just over discussions in the last couple of days, it seems like our colleagues at Los Alamos are very willing and enthusiastic to help organize this. So it's not 100% set in stone yet, but we're very excited for that possibility. And we really hope that in 2023, once we've sorted out everything that's making life difficult right now, we'll have the chance to see you all in person in Los Alamos. So thanks to Tito and everyone else who has helped get that moving, and we'll keep you up to date as we see where it goes over the next months and year, 2-year timescale. So with that, I would simply like to pass the word to Chen Yu and give her the chance to tell us again everything that we were so happy to see already in this workshop.
Okay, I'll try to share my screen. All right, start my talk. Oops, didn't seem to be there. Ah, okay, here, sorry. Ah. Okay, right. Now so set up. So can you hear me? Okay. All right. Well, so here I am charged to give a highlight talk to summarize this wonderful workshop, and I steal this picture from Anatoly and Foming's talk. This is a illustration, very beautiful illustration of the double cell configuration for the EDM storage, EDM neutron storage EDM experiment. And so before I begin, I want to first thank the organizers, Stephanie, Guillaume, and Skylar, to plan and put together this workshop. About a year ago, they sent out, assembled this organizing committee and promised I would have French fine dining and alpine ski. But then because of the global pandemic, so the French cuisine and alpine skiing can only be enjoyed in the virtual reality. After 1 week of this Zoom meetings, I have to say that this is really great to see and hear almost everyone in our small community. It is such a treat to have a full week just dedicated to information exchange and discussion just on the topic of neutral EDM. And during this week, I get several emails or actually verbal thanks, thanking me for organizing this wonderful workshop. But well, I have to be frank that even though I'm on the organizing committee, I really didn't do anything. Okay, all the credits should go to Stephanie, Guillaume, and Skylar. And Stephanie asked me to give a summary talk in the closing session. So after this 1 week of pack information, and I'm sure that everybody's pretty much zoomed out. So I'm also not sure that I can give any more insightful ideas to add to the collection of talks. So whatever I say will just be my own personal perspective, and that will be undoubtedly biased. Okay, so one step back. So I have to explain to my mom and my kids, okay, why do I have to spend the whole week just glued in front of a computer? Because I'm participating in this international workshop on searches for neutral electric dipole moment. Or actually really I have to say in plain language, or it's really a workshop on ongoing efforts to measure zero. Okay, and here I managed to put 26 zeros there. It's or if you want to put it in a poetic sense, it's really an odyssey. Okay, so as you can see in this history plot of how much work has been going in to just measure this zero, and all we're doing now is just trying to shuffle a few more zeros into this quantity. So why are we doing this? It seems to be pretty obsessively thing to do, just measuring zero over and over. And I think we have to blame those people. Okay, so Zeldovich, actually, he was the first one actually proposing the idea that we could possibly trap low energy neutrons in the material bottle for fundamental physics measurement. And Shapiro came up with that idea of putting neutrons in storage cell to measure the spin precession in the electric and magnetic field. And then led by Norman Ramsey and several experimental leaders in the past, and Albert Styrel and Pendlebury, how they realized the idea of ultra cold neutron source at ILL, and several Russian physicists, Kritovich and Ignatovich, they wrote textbooks to encourage us that keep on going, and several people that really contributed to this field over the long many decades. So then, of course, those people inspire us as a group of crazy people now that assemble today across the globe, over the virtual space due to the pandemic. Now we're still pursuing the same thing. So what are we trying to really do? Okay, we're trying to if we are kind of as a friendly competition, we're trying to be the first to find this non-zero in the many zeros after the decimal place, and it seems that they should be evidence. We know that they are evidence that it should be non-zero, and then we hope that we are very close to that. And the reason that we know this journey, this odyssey, is not going to be in vain. We'll eventually reach the shore back to Ithaca. Is because, okay, there are a few evidences I want to share with you. Okay, the evidence piece number one is from Asher's print. I stole this idea from my Indiana colleague, Steve Victor. He retired a few years ago, and then he spent his retirement writing a book for general publics to publicize the physics research we are doing. So I really like this idea. I want to share with everybody this example. So MC Escher, he made many of those highly mathematical form representation of math ideas and science ideas, in particular centered around the theme of symmetry. So here I have a plane filling motif. So it's a reptile. It's a wood print here, wood carved print. You see two lizards. And then now if I put a mirror here, and then I can see the mirror image of this print. But then since this is, I want to be able to reverse all the degree of freedom, so I will do this mirror inversion again to go get the image from top to down. So the first one is from left, right, and the second one is top to down. And I can see that, okay, now this is a parity operation. And you can see that the parity inversed image compared to the original one, it's the general profile is similar, but not exactly the same. And I can say, okay, now let's reverse the black to white and white to black. And you can kind of think about it's kind of a CP operation. So you change the charge conjugation. And then after this, you can say, okay, that's my CP inversion version of the original lizard motif. So now my challenge for you is that, can you find the difference between the final and the original picture? Okay, so we'll check so if you have ideas, put in the chat.
It's the eyes.
Okay, very good, the eyes. Ah, great. And also the signature. Okay, so this is my first piece of evidence that there's a CP violation, okay? Because the CP inverted image is different from the original. And perhaps the creator or the artist who created our universe is kind of a little trick this creator is playing to us. The fact that after the inversion, the signature is different there. So the creator is leaving a hint for us to find the secret of this beautiful creation.
So the thing in the upper left, that is the matter, antimatter. That's the matter that's left. Everything else cancels.
All right.
Sorry.
Okay. Now my second piece of evidence, again, it's actually coming from Bach. So Bach has this famous composition. It's called Crab Canon, and I managed to find it online. So I will play it for you. And if you read music score, you should be able to follow along. So you start from the blue and then just move along until the end. So can you listen? Can you hear it? Okay, so now we get to the end. Now you can, the music note is written in such a way, when you play it backward from the end to the beginning, it will sound exactly the same. Okay, so I want to make sure that it's really the case. And so I don't really have a traditional tape player, so I import this music, the MP3 file, to Audacity. That is a free music kind of a composition software. And then all I did is just ask it to reverse. So now I have a time reverse version of this music. And now listen carefully to see that whether the music sounds exactly the same. Oops, sorry. Let me stop that. How do I stop that? Okay. Oops. All right, now we're back. Any idea what happened? Again, I cannot really see the response. So I'm not going to, so I would tell you maybe later if you ask me. But I have to say that, okay, the notes are exactly the same, but the music, the quality sounds quite different. So Bach here, 300 years ago, actually left another piece of evidence that the time reversal symmetry is broken. So therefore the EDM should exist. Now my last piece of evidence is actually coming from, everybody knows that the EDM should be there because the fact that the corned beef sandwich exists. Of course, if the corn sandwich, that's the hinge on the universe actually exists. I couldn't really come up with this title. That was come up with this creative science journalist, Joe Polka. So he interviewed several of us and then make a short interview clip that's available on this link. You can listen to it. It's about 4 minutes long. Okay, so now let's get back to this progress of the EDM measurement. And so it's all started from the grandfather of the EDM research, Norman Ramsey. And you can see that the parameter space that he covered just with his effort of using the molecular beam style or co-neutron beam style measurement. Mostly was performed at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. And I think the last one was actually deployed at ILL. And then the limiting factor is the V cross E effect. So then to get to that, to mitigate that, and we have to use the ultra-cold neutron, and then that cover this range of data set there. And I want to point out that Michael Pendery actually led the effort at ILL before he unfortunately passed away several years ago. And also because of the COVID and other situation, we also lost two physicists, two UCM physicists in the field, Albert Starl and Vladimir Ignatovich, earlier this year. And it's very sad. We all hope that if they're still around, I'm sure that he'll be with us, listening to those wonderful talks this week. Okay, now I also spend the time to compose this family tree of neutron EDM experiment. You can see that the evolution started from the beam type of experiment and then evolved into the UCM bottle style neutron EDM experiment with double cell idea was proposed by Shapiro and then get carried out at Gachina and then move to ILL. Right now, we're hoping that we'll be able to repeat with better sensitivity at the peak reactor. But then in the meantime, the double cell was pretty elaborate. So the Sussex and Rutherford lab also led this effort of the single cell using the store ultra-cold neutron experiment. Now both experiments now evolved into the current version of the many double cell experiments, including the N2EDM, the PEN-EDM, the new room temperature version of the EDM experiment at Llano, and Toucan experiment at Triumph. And then also evolved into the very challenging liquid helium bath cryogenic style EDM experiment at the spallation neutron source. And also in the meantime, also another, the evolution of the beam style experiment also continued. Now we have a realization of a longer version of experiment, that's the beam EDM experiment. So that's worthwhile to go back to visit Norman Ramsey's original idea is that he find out that for a particular arrangement, that is actually turned out to be more advantageous in many cases, is the one in which the oscillating field is confined to a small region at the beginning of the space in which the energy level are being studied, and to another small region at the end. So you separate the oscillatory field in space, and then also separate the application of oscillatory field in time. And then as a consequence, you end up having additional fringes on top of the broad Rabi envelope. And then the number of fringes depends on the energy spectrum of the neutrons. So he observed that by slowing down the neutron, you can pack more fringes there, and therefore increase the sensitivity for you to determine the central resonant frequency. That's the Lamarck precession frequency. So Jacob gave us a nice discussion on the modern version of the beam experiment. So actually, many years ago, we discovered that for the beam type experiment, it's really limited by the V cross E motional field. So the mitigation was actually put the whole experiment on top of turntable, so you can reverse the velocity, and then in order to cancel out this V cross E effect. That's pretty elaborate. So the beam EDM experiment took data in 2018, and then they were able to use the beam, not ultra cool neutron, now in this case, use the wavelengths just very close to 9 to 10 angstrom. You can also get those very fine fringes here. Oops. Okay, so the proposal for this beam experiment is that it's modular. Each section is only 1 meter. So you can add up many different sections to add up to about 50 meters of flight path. So this is a proposal to the European spallation source, and then using the pulse neutron feature of the time of flight, because we know it's limited by V cross E, but maybe you can turn around to use this as a feature. You can measure the V cross E effect, the EDM shift, the false EDM shift. And then now you can measure your velocity dependence, and you can extrapolate back to the 0 velocity, and then that will be your electric field, electric dipole moment, without the contamination of the V cross E effect. Now the bottle style of the neutron EDM experiment, now we know we put neutrons in to precess around electric field and the background magnetic field here. And then if you can manage to keep the magnetic field the same during the field reversal, and then the difference will be proportional to the electric dipole moment multiplied by the strength of the electric field. However, during the field reversal, it's very hard to control the magnetic field, which always drift around, the ambient field always drift around. So this superior arrangement is that now you have double cell with ground electrodes on the outside and central electrode on the inside. So the field directions are in the opposite direction in the 2 cells. Therefore, in one load, the electric dipole moment can be extracted by the frequency difference between the 2 cells. And this is superior because it's less sensitive to the temporal drift of the background field. Okay, and then we all know that, okay, we want to increase the sensitivity of EDM measurements. So we're measuring the spin precession of the neutrons. But however, in practice, we're still counting neutrons. Just like when we measure analyzing the phase of the neutron spin precession, we have to pass the neutrons through an analyzing foil, and that has different transmission efficiency of the 2 spin state. So we're still doing the counting experiment. Therefore, the sensitivity or the figure merit of the electric dipole moment is governed by such a form. It's inversely proportional to the energy separation that's linear in the electric field. And since we're measuring frequency, the longer you can measure, the better in frequency precision you can get. And also you have the counting statistic of square root of the number of neutrons, and then also how many numbers you can repeat over the beam time that you get in your facility. So therefore, I will start my highlight now. I have 5 highlights. So the highlight number 1 is, of course, the PSI group. After a decade of very dedicated work and very careful control and understanding of the system, they pretty much rebuilt the old ILL apparatus, and now they gave us a new EDM limit last year. And in their the figure of merit, those are the numbers you can see here. So they managed to improve the previous measurement. So maybe not so much on the statistic, but the impressive part is on the level of improvement on the systematic control. So it's a factor of 5 control here. And this was achieved by a very careful study of the many systematic effects. They figured out that the gradient was playing a big role, and they figured out how to use the gravitational shift between the neutron and the mercury co-magnetometer to get a handle on that with the addition of the external CCM magnetometer and also dedicated round of the field mapping. They were able to control that, and also they did they show us how to do the crossing line fit to find out to get data at the zero gradient that's relevant to the EDM neutron EDM extraction. And also there are many other higher order effects, the quadratic and uncompensated gradient drift, and so those are of concern. So therefore, further development on the magnetometers will be needed for us to keep on pushing beyond 10 to the minus 26 ECM. The leading systematic effect, they summarize very well for us. One is the geometric phase effect due to the interplay of the V cross, the gradient of the magnetic field that inducing additional radial component of the magnetic field in addition to the V cross E effect. So when the neutrons are orbiting around the inside the precession chamber, you get additional modulation frequency because of V cross E effect. So then you can apply the Bloch-Seeger effect. You find out that can lead to the EDM, and then that can only be suppressed if you can control the gradient to be better than well, it's very like less than maybe a fraction of a picotesla per centimeter. Another thing that they figure out that is the gravity shift the neutrons. So this has to be corrected, but it turns out that also silver lining because that gives you additional handle to extract the effect of the gradient. All right, so that's the first highlight, and then I want to. This is the table I composed over the last few days about the current ongoing effort. That different styles. So the black ones are the style using which we couple to ultra-cold neutron source, solid deuterium-based ultra-cold neutron source, room temperature style, but very kind of very similar to the old IL setup, with moderate improvement in the neutron counting statistics and also larger chamber size, and then adding another cell to have the double cell configuration. The immediate future is really on those liquid helium driven ultra-cold neutron source. So they have the potential to increase the storage neutron density by 1 or 2 orders of magnitude, and therefore really give you a boost on the counting statistics. Okay. And SNS EDM experiment also using liquid helium to produce ultra-cold neutron, but with a totally different systematic handle by using helium-3 as a co-magnetometer. The beam EDM experiment is also listed here, but we only heard one talk, so I didn't really have a lot of detail to add to this. So when you look at the figure merit, the limiting factor is really the neutron counting statistics. So let's look at how the various ultra-cold neutron sources are performing. So right now, both the PSI and LANO, so we're using solid deuterium, we can get around on the order 10 UCM per cc into a practical experiment for storage, for either the EDM experiment or other type of beta decay experiment. And the future liquid helium-based source will be able to improve this number density much higher. So that's really exciting to see. So therefore, my highlight number 2 is that the ultra-cold neutron sources are getting better, okay? And the construction of a liquid helium UCM sources are really ramping up. So I can see from a series of presentation by our TRIUMPH colleagues, they're really making nice progress in careful design of the cryogenics, the neutronics, and the transport to make it a really a powerful and high density UCN source. And they said that they will start commissioning this cryostat in a few years down the line, and we'll probably be able to see ultra-cold neutrons coming out from the superfluid helium source in about 2 years. Oh, actually 1 year, less than 2 years. That would be very exciting. In the meantime, the Llano UCN source, a few years ago, maybe, I don't know whether this gets reported in the last neutron EDM workshop, but we also redesigned the inner cryostat that houses superfluid, the solid deuterium part, make everything more compact to kind of eliminate the dead space so that we can really concentrate the cold neutron flux in the area of the solid deuterium. So in the Llano source, we only use 2 liters of solid deuterium. And then after this revision, we're able to increase the number of neutron density by about a factor of 6. This was actually, you saw this in Team Chop presentation, and the work was led by Takayasu Ito at Los Alamos. So here, the full scale triumph. Oh, actually, I think I get my slide order reversed. So there's more detail on the full scale triumph UCN source. You can see careful Monte Carlo simulation to optimize the thermalization pre-moderator and the helium part, also in the meantime reducing the heat load. And you can also see that they start cutting metal and welding the helium volume. That's very exciting. They also present a very nice detailed job on the helium-3 refrigerator that's needed to remove the heat load. The UCN source actually is also planned at the peak reactor. They have everything ready. They have the cryogenics tested and the UCN source already built, now just waiting for the reactor to turn on. And when that's coming to reality, we'll be able to get UCN in the trap on the order of several hundred UCN per cc. It's very exciting. We also heard from Kent about if we really want to push this technology, it's possible, not just limited by the resources. If we can manage to dump about 1 megawatt of proton beam on target, and then be able to remove about 100 watts of heat from the superfluid helium bath using the supercooled technology, then you can get the UCN production rate to increase by about from 10 million to 1 billion UCN per second. That would be incredible. In the meantime, so other than deuterium source, we're also trying to understand the limitation of UCN output. PSI presented this very nice work, and also NCSU was the post-star study. We're able to separate the limitation from the surface effect and the bulk effect. So I think different, at Los Alamos, we also saw such type of reduction of the UCN output over days. And so we try various things, melt and refreeze, and those things. They tend to restore the UCN output, but it's annoying, but I just have to incorporate it into your operation. And the PSI colleagues also present this very nice UCN spectrum measurement as a function of the beam on the target. This is really a nice handle. Use neutron as a probe to see the condition of the solid deuterium crystal. Okay, the highlight number 3, we saw significant field damping available in large-scale magnetic shielded room. That's really needed to have a quiet magnetic field environment to keep on pushing the EDM sensitivity. So in the Munich room, they're able to see a shielding factor larger than 6 million. And you can also damp the magnetic field gradient on a comparable level. So that opened out the possibility, perhaps we don't really need, if the field is so quiet and the drift is so small, we really don't need the co-magnetometer. Okay, modulo that there might be some residual effect of the leakage current that would be dangerous not to have any monitoring. PSI, they commissioned their large shield, also have a comparable shielding factor, and it's really nice, and it's very nice to see that this technology now is available to people in the field. So now the reason that we need that shielding room, as opposed to this traditional cylindrical type of shielding you see on typical tabletop type of EDM measurements, both on neutron and atomic EDM, is because the gradient actually causes the EDM, false EDM. Okay, that's due to the motional field of the mercury, because if you have to employ the colorimeter to subtract out the ambient field gradients, and then you have false EDM effect due to the mercury. So the only way to eliminate that is to find out the operating point where the gradient is truly zero. Okay, so having a quiet environment to start with to give you will actually reduce the data fluctuation here and give you better sensitivity and a better control of the gradient. Okay, highlight number 4 is that again, gradient is the key here to push the EDM sensitivity. So PSI colleagues and Triumph colleagues also spend a lot of time trying to study and demonstrate and come up with advanced algorithm to use external magnetometer arrays, and that alone might not be enough, and also use offline field mapping for systematic corrections. So the false EDM, due to the use of magnetometer, can be characterized in such a term. So depending on the linear gradient that actually can be handled by using the magnetometer. But then for the higher orders, then you have to rely on external magnetometers. So those optically pumped magnetometer cells that can be fabricated to large numbers and then put them in arrays. There were discussion about what configuration to put them to give us the best handle, because after all, the gradient is what we're trying to measure. But then when you do the measurement, you have magnetometers placed in a different place in space, different position in space. Now you have to know your response function matrix very well, and to invert this based on what you measure from the field sensor, and to get what you need for EDM correction. Okay, so Krishnia also gave us say if the external magnetometer alone are not enough, then we can also have offline measurement using field mapping, and this is a very nice design of I think it's flux gate magnetometer, robust flux gate magnetometer, and be able to cover different position in X, Y, Z, and here using the rotational translational stage here. And then by collecting that data, she also showed us that how do we now convert from the measurement magnetic fields into doing different Fourier decomposition and also harmonic decomposition into the information we need. Then that can be used to control the size of the electric dipole moment, false EDM. All right, so even better, okay. Guillaume actually figured out a way that perhaps maybe we don't have to work so hard to figure out those gradients, because if we're smart enough to work then maybe we can make those EDM gradient effect zero. So this false EDM turns out that when you perform a full analysis by looking at the position correlation function and the field correlation function, and you can find out that there's a zero crossing at a somewhat higher field than the nominal 1 microtesla. So for the N2 EDM experiment using a larger chamber, the magic field that allows the false EDM effect to come to zero is just about between 7 to 8 microtesla. And then for the traditional one, the smaller radius, now you have to go to about 20 microtesla. That's really wonderful. And also other phantom fields, I think they define it as whatever field that cannot really be assessed using just the vertical arranged magnetometers. Then you can also suppress their contribution to the false EDM effect by by a pretty large factor of 30 and 40. So that's truly wonderful. We also saw a lot of work going into thinking about now if we can get the array of external magnetometers, what are the best places to put them? And I was very intrigued to see this using the genetic algorithm. So by applying the evolution and natural selection, you can actually come up with the best solution to get us the information we need to control the false EDM. Coupled to that, all those magnetic field measurements will be much easier if we can design our coils more smart. So one, I was very intrigued to see this innovative GLM coil shapes. So in our group, we'll be also thinking a lot along this line, as you heard from Austin. So Mark actually presented this idea of you can have GLM coils on those curved winding pattern that can be fabricated and put into our EDM environment. The nice thing about that is that you can design those coils to only excite certain gradient, so that you don't have to worry about turning on one coil and induce undesired gradient in other directions. So this makes the inversion process much easier. That's also very exciting. Okay, the last highlight I have is the steady progress that I've seen in preparing for the big cryogenic neutron EDM experiment. So this is a very different from the Ramsey type of a separate oscillatory field method measurement. So other than trying to assess the spin precession in the end, so then you don't really know what happened in between. Instead, they try to use this, I think Bob coined it, the eyes open during the storage method. So you keep on looking at the neutron precession during the free precession time, and then you can fit all the neutron precession. But however, we cannot really see the neutron precession. So the way to do it is to rely on the spin-dependent neutron helium-3 capture cross-section. So then the capture will give you triton and proton, then that can scintillate in the very environment, that's liquid helium environment, that produce ultra-cold neutron. And liquid helium also support, so not only support ultra-cold neutron production, it also enable, it's a very nice dielectric to allow the increase of the electric field. So all the room temperature experiment, we are limited by the sparks, right, around the dielectrics. You have to separate the two electrodes. So with superfluid helium, that field can be increased to 75 kilovolt per centimeter, or even higher. And also helium bath is, the mercury will not work in helium, it's just going to be freeze out to metal. So instead, the cold magnetometer in this case, again, is helium-3, and the helium-3 precession can be monitored by using squid magnetometer. Right. So now you have two species, polarized neutron and polarized helium-3 precessing in the same environment. Now, due to the spin-dependent capture, now the resulting scintillation light is going to be the B frequency between the two species precessing around the same field here. And now when you actually subtract the two different spin state, and you are going to see the signal now actually increase in time here. So just like the phase accumulate in time. But however, because of the oscillatory behavior, so then your average signal, okay, now seems to be, you're losing a lot of the efficiency there. So then the idea is that perhaps if we can make the spin precession of between neutron and helium-3 exactly the same, you lock the phase there. So then the signal, it will just be can keep on accumulating in time, and then you can increase your statistic by a factor of pi/2 here. And there are also other advantage that brought out by this critical dressing is that you can mitigate the effect of the B0 field drifting, and also the helium-3 and neutron pseudo-magnetic field, and can also be suppressed. There are a lot of progress made. It's a very difficult, highly challenging cryogenic experiment. Lots of progress been made over the years, and especially reported in this workshop. So we heard from the improvement of the polarized atomic helium-3 beam source that's provided the polarized helium-3 by replacing the nozzle from the nominal size to the multi-channel plate configuration. You can get better transmission and also less background. So Marie actually gave us an update on how do you actually, the technique of how do you apply high voltage from 35 kilovolts to 800 kilovolts in situ, just by moving electrodes between the charging electrode and the source electrode and also the target electrode, moving several times. And as you can see, that it's been demonstrated in experiment that you can get to 800 kilovolts in situ. Once you get that high voltage, you also have to worry about breakdown. So Grant actually gave us a discussion on several scale of the high voltage test apparatus at Los Alamos. You can see that it's actually really complicated here. A large cryogenic dilution refrigerators and being built for that. And so once you can apply high voltage, then you can also study the scintillation light yield. The concern was that maybe the electric field might suppress the scintillation light. So Tito gave a very nice presentation on the understanding of the process of the scintillation production and also the effect of electric field. And we can see that the suppression is not going to be too bad. And it turns out that the suppression can turn around to be a nice monitoring of the electric fields during the EDM measurement. So the scintillation light now is measured, is scintillated at extreme UV 80 nanometer, and you have to convert it to 360 nanometer, to other wavelengths, like in this case, blue light, so that the photomultipliers can be sensitive to. So Kent spent a lot of time actually study this wool coating, the deuterated TBB coating to allow this wavelength shifting conversion. So Vince also tell us about, okay, you can, with that TBB coated acrylic cell, you can actually have a significant number of photoelectrons you can measure in the cryogenic environment that emulate the actual EDM experiment. But I couldn't help myself but just to steal this slide from Grant, the reality of a cryogenic experiment. So Grant was listing that the tedious journey that he had to go through from cool down to cool down. Every time you cool down, something might go wrong. So the temperature didn't really, initial cool down temperature didn't really cool below liquid nitrogen temperature. And maybe the refill capillary get lost, and then you have to pour the cooling. And each time of this kind of a cool down, finding out problem and warm up again, it's another month or two lost. It's really time consuming. But even with such a type of challenge, the collaboration still be able to make progress on this. And so therefore, now those all provide critical training for the neutron EDM measurement. Okay, I steal this from my daughter's night reading book, so by Dr. Seuss in Cat in the Hat. To do an EDM measurement, just like this cat, okay. So look at me. It's fun to have fun, but you have to know how, okay. And I can hold up the cup and the milk and the cake. I can hold up this books and fish on the rack. I can hold a toy ship and little toy man. And look, with my tail, I can hold a real fan. I can fan with the fan and I hop on the ball. And that is not all. Oh no, that is not all. So with that, I also like collecting art. So those are a few examples of, I think, beautiful images I see throughout the workshop. And so with that, then I will conclude my talk. And my experiments are at Los Alamos, so I go there a lot. But then last year, due to the lockdown, I wasn't able to, but I should be there pretty soon. And I'm excited. In 2 years, we'll be able to see everybody there at Los Alamos. And hopefully that will meet in person, and I'm sure that there will be lots to talk about. Until then, take care, everyone. Thank you.
Wonderful, Chen-Yu.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Chen-Yu.
Right, I didn't hear any questions.
I don't see any.
So maybe Skylar, then we'll just adjourn.
Yeah, I really don't have much to add. I'll just repeat thanking everyone. So in particular, the people who helped organize our fabulous lecturers, Adam, who's here in the audience now, Laura and Dieter, I think I saw as well. Yeah, he's here. So thank you for the immense preparation that took for giving us really useful, pedagogical and engaging lectures. And then thanks to all of the speakers and everyone who just came and participated. This was really wonderful and we couldn't have done it without you. So we hope to see you for real the next time.
Yes, Skylar, Guillaume, and Stephanie. Well done.
Super.
Thank you very much.
Great.
And also I'd like to say that we look forward to welcoming you all in New Mexico, hopefully in 2023. And I'd like to say thank you again for everybody who organized this. It was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Hope to see you soon in person.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you, Jenny. It was perfect, really.
Okay. All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank
you.
So I don't want to leave, but I don't want to be accused of not paying attention.
No, this was tongue in cheek only. You get credit, Marie. But this is pretty consistent. I think at the end of the day, we usually only had 5 or so people. So if those were even signed in for the next session, that's awesome.
Thank you. Hope you see everyone in 2
Thanks.
years or sooner. Bye-bye.
It was great to meet you all.
Yes.
Yeah, it was great to have so many new faces. This was awesome.
Yes.
You.